applications, including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centerpoint Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public. My name is Fabien Poulin. I'll be chairing today's hearings, and you can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, Heather McLean, and Julianne Wright. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with different agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they have fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. Mr. Coordinator, we received all statutory declarations?
We have, Mr. Chair.
Did it go off? Okay, sorry. Thanks. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have an opportunity to make the final comments and reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means that the decision won't be delivered today. In either case, within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure we'll be following today? We have several applications to hear, but we have to deal with some preliminary procedural matters. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, I need.
Mr. Chair, is your camera on?
I've just been informed I don't have it on. Let me just fix that up there. There it is. Got it. Okay.
What happens when you're out for a couple of days?
Yeah, your brain goes numb. Okay, so there's no declarations of interest for any of the panel members. We have no minutes to adopt. Now move on to withdrawal or adjournment request. We have received adjournment requests for 2 applications. The first one is having to do with 839 Shefford. Zuzana Keslerova, are you available? Come on down. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I understand you would like to have your application adjourned today?
I believe it was proposed by the city and we do agree with the adjournment.
Okay.
We will submit a secondary consent application for the easement either today or tomorrow.
Okay.
And we would like to get on the agenda as soon as possible.
Okay. What we'll do is I'm going to propose that we adjourn this application sine die. It'll give you an opportunity to get all your ducks in a row and get it in on time. I don't want to set a time now without all of the application documents being filed. So I'll ask the panel if they'd like to adjourn this application sine die. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
May I?
Sure.
We received an email confirming that we were able to get on the agenda on March 19th this morning.
When did you get that email?
This morning.
And who was it from?
Community of Adjustment Coordinator, I believe, Jeff.
Jeff?
Jeff.
Mr. Chair, I can clarify that
committee staff, if we have a complete application, should be able to schedule an item for March 19th, but it's conditional on the payment being received and any additional documentation. If that is provided today or tomorrow, we expect we'll be able to meet that timeline.
Okay, so in that case, March 19th, is the panel agreeable to adjourning this application to the 19th of March?
My understanding, Mr. Chair, is that the payment hasn't been received, and so there's still some question about the timing, so it might be better to keep it sine die, and then they can get on March 19th if they complete the application.
Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. Yes.
So in other words, you need to complete the application with all of the documents required. And then they'll put you on the docket for the next March 19th. Okay, but all that documentation has to be placed. Otherwise, we're going to be adjourning this sine die today. Okay,
We are able to submit either today or tomorrow.
then they will put it on the agenda for the 19th.
Perfect.
Okay,
Much appreciated.
okay. Again, all those in favor of adjourning this application sine die, please raise your hands. Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much.
Our next application up for adjournment has to do with 65 Arco. And N. Eckert, are you available? Are they remote? Not, oh, here we go. Is that Mr. or Miss N. Eckert?
No, it's Nick from Ottawa General Contractors. We are representing them. They are our clients, Mr. Chair.
Okay, can you please state your name?
Yep, it's Nicholas Carangis.
Okay. And are you in agreement with this application to be adjourned sine die?
Yes, we are.
Great. I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application to be adjourned sine die. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application has been adjourned, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to those items that are unopposed. The criteria for being an unopposed applications is as follows. No objections or concerns from the parties, the applicant, city, or the public. No amendments are required. No registered speakers. Signposting declaration has been received. The applicant or agent has confirmed that they agree with all the requested conditions, if any, and there's no questions from panelists. So to that end, I'd like to move on to item number 7, 1267 Summerville.
Thank you,
Good
Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And the reason why I asked you to come down first before the other one is one of our members, our panel members, has a question for you with respect to the driveway. Mr. Baltz?
Yes, thank you. So, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, they're in your report and your planning rationale. There are two variances mentioned in section 1. Is that just a holdover from an earlier plan? One of them is the one we have as the variance, and the other is a driveway slope variance.
Yeah, it's a holdover from the old application. There's no variance required for the driveway slope at all.
Okay, so that's just a
Yeah.
mistaken inclusion.
Mistake on my part.
All right, so
Okay,
no more
thank you.
problems if we've confirmed
Thank you.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from panel? No? Okay. So this application, along with application number 6, having to do with 2023, is on the unopposed applications list. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of these two applications as they are unopposed. All those in favor? So those two applications are approved.
Thank you, panel and chair. Thank you.
Good point, thanks. One I missed that is also unopposed is having to do with 167 Yoho. S. Ahmed, are you available? Okay. So since it's unopposed and it meets the criteria that I mentioned earlier, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application as being unopposed. All those in favor, please raise your hands. That application having to do with 167 Yoho is also unopposed, and it is approved. Moving on to our first application that we'll hear today is having to do with 4200 Ennis Road. And Mr. Ireland, are you available? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you like to give us a brief description of your application today?
Yes, I can start off brief, and if you have anything else, I can add. So it's a proposal or request to reduce the parking for a mixed-use development at 4200 Innes Road. It's for 293 rental units and 340 square meters of a medical facility. It's in the final stages of site plan approval. We're at the third round of comments. We're down to the last few comments. There's the medical facility, there's visitor parking spaces, then there's resident parking spaces for the apartment buildings. There's 3 buildings on the site. And then there's parking for what's effectively a mixed-use building because of the medical facility. All the parking rates are provided in accordance with the zoning bylaw, except for the apartment buildings, because that actually has a different rate, 1.2 rather than 1 for units in a mixed-use building. So that's the application, to reduce it from 1.2 to 0.96 for residents. The visitor parking is per the bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel if you've got a question or two for the applicant, Mr. Barrett. Yes. No, okay. Ms. Wright, no? Mr. McLean? Mr. Balls? No?
We were gonna staff the question.
Staff, yeah. Okay, well, no, thank you very much, sir. I'd like to ask the planning department for any comments they may have with respect to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I assume you saw in the staff report that I made a request that the requested variance be amended to reflect the parking rate per section 101 of the bylaw rather than in number of parking spaces. I just want to make sure that that makes sense to everybody and yeah, okay.
Yeah, would it be possible or would it be wise to add the whole number, the exact number of parking spaces? Or is it it's too variable?
So I wouldn't include the number of parking spaces, because as soon as we include a number of parking spaces, then well, I shouldn't say that. So I think it's only appropriate to include the parking space rate, because that rate will apply regardless of any changes to the unit count that the applicant proposes. Whereas if we just set a number of parking spaces, it's not something that is actually specified in the zoning bylaw. So it's not like we can vary from a specific number to provide an additional specific number. So it's more appropriate to just stick with the rate and vary the rate. And leave the actual numbers out of there, because the number of parking spaces that are provided for the mid-rise apartment dwellings, they could vary based on the unit count, but but the rate protects the number of spaces per unit.
Okay, thanks. Is there any changes to the planning report received? I noticed that there has some administrative changes, just specifically a word crossing out part and putting in block 1 on the registered plan 4M1732, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that was just identified during the final review of the report.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Barrett?
Yes, I guess a question to the applicant with regards to the number of parking spaces, then for the number of units. Can you provide us any example of the impact of applying the rate on the number of parking spaces that you're going to have for the apartment dwellings? Can you've given us a number for of apartment dwellings. What would that mean in parking spaces, please?
So you mean if we apply this rate,
Yes.
what will the total number of parking spaces be?
Yeah, yes, for the apartment buildings.
Oh, just 1 second.
Just a snapshot. It's not, I'm not trying to put you on spot. It's just
Yeah.
a snapshot of what the rate differential is.
So for the apartment, we have 3 apartment buildings. They're required, each one has 70 or 71 units. And so the rate required is 84 or 85 spaces per apartment. Maybe it's easier if I give you the total number. So 212 units, apartment units, required space is 254, and we are providing 204. So that's a reflection of the 0.96.
So, thank you.
Ms. Wright, any questions? Okay, Mr. Baltz?
So at what point, through you, Mr. Chair, in the process is it about to be built? So what I'm getting at, I guess, is if we vary the rate and the plans change so that we now have much larger buildings, potentially, because we're changing the zoning by doing this, we may be increasing the number of actual spaces quite a bit. So, which was the intent of asking the city planner about capping the total number of spaces. So in terms of impact, what's the potential here if we simply give a blanket rate rather than tying it to plans, or which I think you opposed, or capping the number of parking spaces that are allowed?
We're happy for it to be a rate, but also a cap wouldn't be a problem either, because the plans are effectively settled. I mean, this is a project, like I said, it's in the last stages of site plan approval, and there's no intention to add units or change the buildings to that extent. The applicant wants to build this soon. So the idea would be to get site plan approval and then start building based on these plans.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so what would that number then be? What is the number of parking spaces attached to these 3 buildings?
To the 3 buildings, 204 spaces.
That's 204. So
Resident spaces.
if we were to specify 204 spaces in addition to the rate, that would not cause you a problem.
So through the chair, my name is Greg Winters. I'm a director of planning at Novatech Engineering. So I think we should be sticking with the staff rate. It's our acceptance that we deal with a rate rather than a specific number of units. It was good to talk about the spaces in its entirety and understand the 4 tests that we're applying to the site, and that we are providing a sufficient amount of parking. But to the planner's point, we might run into a situation in the 11th hour. We're very close to site plan approval on this project. There's been building permits that have been pushed through the process. So we're anticipating construction in May. We're not anticipating any significant changes to the design. We're not going to add additional floors to the buildings. But there's always a risk that something could come up in the 11th hour that could change a parking space here and there to address another technical requirement. And in fact, just before this application went to panel, we had to shift a couple of parking spaces around to deal with accessibility and some of the undersized and oversized parking spaces. So it's our preference to stick to a rate at this point in time that would be entirely consistent with other applications that have been processed in the east area of the city of Ottawa. My company actually participated in a recent zoning bylaw amendment. It was a process we went through 3 apartment buildings. And rather than going through the committee, we had to go rezone the site anyways. And so we adopted a rate that was very similar to this one. And so again, I guess just gives us that little bit of flexibility if the planning staff have some 11th hour question about something.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Pardon?
I said, I think my questions have been answered. I remain concerned that it hasn't been addressed. What happens if this property, for example, gets flipped, right? Plans change, and granting a blanket rate to any mid-rise building that's on this site could potentially increase the number of, have a large impact on the number of parking spaces.
Is this ratio just for the apartment buildings?
That's
So the other
main
uses
variance.
that are on the site, you are adhering to the zoning bylaw requirements for those uses.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Does that help, Mr. Pulse? Okay. Ms. McLean, any questions?
I'm just wondering, the notice was circulated based on 299 spaces. Am I hearing now that it's now you're gonna provide 204 based on the rate is?
The numbers are taking into account all the uses on the site. So what I was talking about with 202 is just for the apartments. Just the variance,
So the medical and the visitor parking will comply.
correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this matter? Remote or otherwise? I don't have any registered speakers. Okay, so I'll now ask the panel if they'd like to reserve this decision or make a decision. All those in favor of reservation, please raise your hands. Application is going to be reserved and we'll give you an answer later within 10 days. Thank you very much. Okay, and the last item on our agenda today has to do with 1303 Coldrey Avenue. I'm looking for Aaron Duncan.
Yes, that's myself.
Oh, I can see you now. Hi, Aaron.
Hello.
Okay, so we're now moving on to your application. Would you please give us a brief description of the application we're going to hear today?
Sure, I've prepared a presentation. We could start the slides. So the subject site is located in the Carlington neighborhood within the River Ward and under the official plan is designated inner urban area transect with the evolving neighborhood overlay. The property is south of Carling Avenue, which is the purple line running left to right on the slide. The lot is situated approximately at the midpoint of Coldrey Avenue between the intersection of Kirkwood Avenue and Merivale Road and is highlighted with the star on the map shown. Next slide, please. The property is highlighted with the red star and faces south onto Coldrey Avenue. It is zoned R3A, which is the blue area across the middle of the page. Across the street, it is zoned I1A, highlighted in pink and yellow. At the rear of the property, the zoning permits R4UC, shown in green, and R2G, shown in peach. Coldrey Avenue is a mix of institutional, commercial, and residential buildings. Next slide, please. The satellite image shown here shows the property's existing conditions highlighted within the red lines. An 8-unit townhome building faces onto Coldrey Avenue with paved parking at the rear, accessed by 2 driveways, one on each side of the building. The driveway on the right-hand side is shared with the neighboring block of townhomes. Currently, residents park directly against the north property line, which you can see across the top of the property. As well, some residents have converted their backyard space into parking. Each townhouse is serviced by its own municipal services currently. Next slide, please. The top photo shows the front of the townhomes with front yard landscaping, street trees, and street-facing front doors. The bottom 2 photos show the properties directly in front of the townhomes, which are a schoolyard and community health center. Next slide, please. The top photo shows the semi-detached homes on the left of the townhouse, which is to the west. And on the bottom photo shows the neighboring block of townhomes to the right. to the east and their shared driveway. Next slide, please. The photo on the left shows the rear yard of the townhomes in the left of the photo and the parking along the north property line on the right, with paved shared access between. The photo on the right is taken from the opposite direction, looking east, and shows how parking is currently on the left and right-hand side of the shared driveway in the rear. Next slide, please. The photo on the left is another of the rear yard parking facing the rear neighbors, and the next two photos show the access on either side of the block of townhomes. Next slide, please. This application requests severance of the 8 townhomes into individual lots. Each lot will be severed to include 1 townhouse dwelling with yards and 1 rear yard parking spot. Easements will be created to allow the shared use of the driveway, 3 visitor parking spots, a snow storage area, and a hydro corridor. The existing shared driveway along the west side of the property, which is the left-hand side of the plan, will be narrowed to allow more soft landscaping, while the shared driveway on the east side, the right-hand side of the plan, will remain as is. The rear driveway and parking will be reconfigured to meet current zoning bylaw parking and driveway dimensions to provide additional soft landscaping and to create a landscape buffer between the parking spaces and the neighbors to the north. The front yard walkways will be widened with new pavers. A new solid wood fence will be installed around the north perimeter of the site and between the individual lots in the rear yards. Next slide, please. Measures will be taken to protect the existing mature trees adjacent to the property line in the rear of the and in the city right of way at the front, which are highlighted in green, and at the top and bottom of the arborist plan. 1 existing distinctive tree will be removed in the rear, shown in red, which has been determined to be in poor condition and conflicts with the new parking layout. 2 new front yard trees will be planted to compensate, which are shown in blue on the plan. Next slide, please. This shows the tree to be removed. Next slide, please. Our plan has been prepared, creating 38 parts to allow easements for access, a hydro corridor, parking, and snow storage. Along with the request for severance, the 6 interior lots that are created seek relief from the zoning bylaw with variances for lot width and area. The required lot area is 180 meters squared and a required lot width of 6 meters in the R3A zone. The new interior lots will have a lot area ranging between 149 meters squared to 175 meters squared and a lot width ranging from 4.85 meters to 4.98 meters. I can speak to the 4 tests or wait for that.
Oh, I think we've got a good handle on your presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. I'd like to ask the panel for any questions they may have. Mr. Baltz?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. The parking area in the rear is being reconfigured with all the parking spaces now planned to be associated with each individual building near its rear wall, right? But people have been parking in what's now designated the buffer area all the way to the, I believe, north. Is that buffer area now protected in some way, or is that going to be reconverted to parking at some point?
So we would plan to actually landscape that area so that you couldn't park there anymore. The 3 visitor parking spots will be delineated in that back area, but as you could see in the photos, the pavement just sort of becomes dirt and people park there. So the intention is to stop that from happening. So to actually have a landscaped curbed area to prevent people parking right up against the fence.
So there'll be a physical barrier of some sort at that point to delineate that and make it hard to park on it. Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Ms. McLean. Okay, Ms. Wright.
Yeah, both Member Barrett and I have a question with respect to, will there be any sort of joint use and maintenance agreement at all? I'm just curious about, but I don't see it in any of the conditions, so. Oh, there we go. It's on that page. There we go.
Yes.
Never mind.
The city did put that as one of the conditions, and we've agreed to it.
See it now. Sorry. That's fine. Thanks very much.
Mr. Barrett, any questions? Okay. So, Ms. Duncan, so I note that there's a correction on the notice, specifically dealing with 1303A Coldrey Avenue. The easement is over part 29, not 34 for hydro service. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And there are several conditions. Are you in agreement with these conditions?
Yes, we are.
Great. Okay. All right. So now I'd like to move on to our planning department. Ask them if they've got any comments to make with respect to this application. Siobhan Kelly, are you available?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further comments before those in the report.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the last say on this matter is up to you, Ms. Duncan. Would you like to say anything else?
I have nothing further.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask the panel if they'd like to reserve judgment or would like to make a decision today. First of all, would you like to reserve judgment? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Is there someone here from the, I don't have a speaker, do I? Ouch. Pardon me? So a member of the public, is there anybody here who would like to speak to this application? Okay. Okay, so again, getting different suggestions. All those in favor of making a decision on this application today, please raise your hands.
Reserve it?
No, to make a decision on this one right in front of the public.
I would love to.
Okay, so we're going to reserve our decision and you'll receive our decision within 10 days. It'll be written. Ms. Duncan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that concludes our business today. Thank you everyone for your help. See you in a couple of weeks.